get back to that part. So many
Can I
comments
add
coming
something
in.
about
Yes,
that,
go ahead.
actually?
Go ahead.
I think
Rehema.
I think a main reason why that is the way it is, especially for us, you see how Jide was explaining why can't you believe me?
Yeah.
It's because growing up in America, you are told you have a voice, you should be able to express your opinion. You're a person, right?
That
you
was
think-
sneak.
That was a sneak.
I would say for us Nigerian children, pidgin is very easy to pick up on. It's more just understanding the context you're in, and it's easier to even start to try and use pidgin. But I would say for our ethnic tribes, for me, I'm the Yoruba tribe. A lot of us children can understand our language fully. We can understand it, but we can never communicate, because what usually happens in our households is that from a young age, our parents either speak to us in our language. For me, it was Yoruba. My mom always spoke to me in Yoruba, but my father would speak to me in English, and I would always respond to whatever they're saying in English. And I've noticed that in other ethnic groups, especially Hispanic and Asian cultures,
Yeah.
from a young age, the entire household is speaking their language.
Yep.
And then a lot of children, when they get to school, is when they're first meeting English for the first
Yeah.
time.
Yes.
And I feel African children now, parents now need to start doing that for their children. I think the emphasis
Repeat that again, please.
I say that African parents now, from a young age, from the moment they're born, should just be speaking their ethnic language to them.
My man.
Now, this is very interesting because I think the assumption had been, kids brought up in the U.S. do not want to speak and that was a very dangerous and wrong assumption. Even from because I've talked to a couple of people your age, slightly older, and I seem to hear the same theme.
Yeah.
I wish, my parents started speaking to me in our language from before we went to school. So I hope parents are listening. People who are parents, or if you have a young child right now, or if you're planning to become a parent, and this has to start. I personally have experience with this. This has to start, and it has to be very strictly enforced. The easiest person to teach a language is a child.
Yes.
That's the easiest language student, and they will follow you on everything that you say. We have a very interesting experience, in my extended family. We have a family in Germany, whereby there's a Kenyan, of course, married to a German, and their child speaks German, English, Kiswahili. Speaks all the three languages. And the funny thing is that the Kiswahili he speaks is a very fluent version of Kiswahili, because he's not had the chance to interact with Sheng and interact with all these other different languages. So parents, I hope you're paying attention here. Let me go through some comments here that are still coming through. I can see Ruth Kilungu is saying African American is a culture by itself, described by descendants of slaves. I guess that was on the conversation we were having. And then Annette is also saying, please talk about being an American, being in the American school system. Parents took teachers' word like gospel, truth without understanding American nuances and racism. Speak on your experiences, please. Wow, let's actually pause there before I read the rest of the comments. Because I think going back to our African countries, parents would take the teacher's word. The teacher's word, was the truth and nothing but the truth. And as kids, we would understand that whatever the teacher says goes. In fact, whenever you get in trouble in school, the best thing you would want is for not your parents to be told, because there's no way your parent is believing you. They're only believing the teacher. But here Annette is saying something about nuances about racism. So maybe you guys can talk about it. I don't know, Jide, maybe you can start, about just believing what the teacher says, which is very common with African parents.
Yeah, I'll say that it does definitely happen. I actually have an experience with this where in the 7th grade for a science class, I actually ended up getting a B, which got me in trouble because I turned in an assignment and everybody in the class saw me turn in the assignment. And towards the end of the semester, he said, I never turned it in. Come next semester, he found the assignment, but he had told my parents that I had never turned it in. And at that time, I was having issues with turning in assignments, so they just believed him that I didn't turn it in. But I was getting more frustrated at this teacher because he was a white teacher, and I felt like he was also kind of targeting me in that class for other reasons. But it was just, I was telling my parents, why can't you just believe me that I've done this thing? Why is it that you're listening to the teacher more than you're listening to your own child?
Wow, Mike, this is interesting because, like, for us, even when we knew the teacher had said something that wasn't true, like, it wasn't even a debate in our mind that we knew the parent is just gonna believe the teacher.
Yeah, there was no conversation. If the teacher said, then that's what it was.
Yeah.
It didn't matter what you say. You didn't go home trying to dispute the teacher. It's like disputing a teacher, doctor, or pastor. Those three people, plus a lawyer. You don't dispute those people. So none of them were disputed. So at least in Jide's case, he had, I guess, an open path where there was a conversation. He could go, for lack of a better word, back and forth with his parents and have a conversation. We didn't have that growing up. The conversation was one way: do as I say, not as I do. Period.
Okay, all right, and we're gonna get back to that part. So many comments coming in. Yes,
that,
go ahead.
actually?
Go ahead.
I think I think a main reason why that is the way it is, especially for us, you see how Jide was explaining why can't you believe me?
Yeah.
It's because growing up in America, you are told you have a voice, you should be able to express your opinion. You're a person, right? And my parents, for one, have they were instilling that in us at a very young age. But I think the difference is growing up in Africa or in Kenya specifically, it's a bit different because the authority figure is the final voice.
Yes.
And
absolutely.
not to say that's not the case here, but it's a bit looser because we are we have autonomy. We are told, if you don't like something, say it. If you're upset about something, say it. If something is wrong, vocalize it. I feel that's the main difference.
Okay. All right. So parents, I hope you're listening. These are small details that maybe some parents did not, even think about it, but these are very important. So Kenyan Jui here is saying, while how one perceives oneself does matter, the truth is how others perceive you in America trumps it all. When that cop pulls you over, he could care less about the prefix that leads that African, that is Kenyan American or Nigerian American. And I think I think this is a fair statement that Kenyan Jew is making.
No, I even make this case myself often.
Yeah.
If I were to get pulled over today, the cop is not differentiating my name from, he doesn't know who he's pulled over. All he knows is that I'm a black man. So yes, that's why I was saying that it depends on who is seeing me first and where, the context of when and where they are seeing me. If you're seeing me in broad daylight, you're going to say, oh, is he African American? And then you'll see some of my ethnic features, and then you'll say, oh, he's not straight up African American. He's probably from West Africa, but I do not know a specific country.
Right.
Yeah. There's some comments. I think you probably right above there. So there's Trish says Ados. That means
that's African descendants of
slaves.
Yes.
Ados, not Ados.
You see what I have to do? I'm just being corrected,
Who?
But anyway, no. Says the
we're gonna get into that later.
The term African American should be reserved for those who are descendant of those enslaved into, was it chattel slavery?
Yeah. Chattel.
Mm-hmm.
And Jide Rehema is asking, what's the one issue? Let me just get this out there. What's the one issue most parents struggle to relate with your generation?
Great question, Jide Rehema.
No, it's Jide Gofu.
Jide Gofu.
Thank you.
Great
Hiram needs to be
question.
changed. That's all I'm saying.
Jide Rehema. It's her name.
Okay, all right.
Okay.
Tutaonana nyuma ya text.
Okay, Miss 19-year-old. Let's see whose house you gonna be going back to.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Can I answer this?
Yes. Go ahead.
Okay. This is the main thing. I feel like the main struggle, in my opinion, is our parents, they're slightly incapable of seeing our perspective away from their parents' perspective. And I can elaborate on this. When I'll be explaining my opinion on something that is quote unquote, you new kids, you Gen Z kids, you guys have these ideas, I'll try to explain it to them in the most simplest way of just how we have taken it in, how we have internalized it. And our parents will still be seeing it in the way that their parents perceive it.
Yeah.
Even though like they are their own people and they're adults too, and they're also like, you know, parents, it's like an instilled mentality. And I feel like that's the main thing. It's really hard to like break out of that mold, but I think like if we were all just capable of like viewing the perspective without like outside factors, then most of these conflicts that we have growing up with our families and with our parents would not be there.
Okay. All right.
That's it.
That's a fair point. And